Okay.
Hello, good evening everyone. Happy Friday. Can't believe we're almost all the way through the month of September. It's really flying by and fall has definitely arrived in New England, I gotta say. Check out long sleeve shirts, jeans. I almost put on a pair of boots today, but I'm still trying to stay with my flip-flops because Wendy Sears calls me flip-flop boy because I wear them all year long. So, tonight we've got a pretty good lineup. Shannon's got some really awesome cocktails to make tonight. I think everybody's going to really enjoy them. I think she's making 4 different cocktails. 2 of them are just my favorite, and got a lot of little stories about those. Couple of things, we're continuing to work on the website. We just added on a recipe that I typically prepare here for pan-seared duck breast. It's not hard. It looks like it's a lot, but it's just several steps. It's just different than if you were cooking a steak or a hamburger or something of that nature. So I hope you guys give it a try. Don't be afraid of duck. Duck is just an amazing piece of meat when it's cooked properly. Most people either overcook it or they just don't cook it the proper way. In the future, I plan on doing a duck confit that is a little different way of method of cooking duck. And then Mark Flores from Marshfield sent me a recipe, and I decided I'm going to make that probably the next thing, and that is crab cakes. And I'll probably make that in a video fashion. The pan-seared duck recipe that I did is step-by-step with photographs as I prepared that. That's on friesies.com or friesiescornerbar.com. Please check it out. If you have comments, feel free to email us or send a text or something of that nature. So without a lot of time on the housekeeping stuff, I'm going to just talk a little bit about rum. I was going to talk about a couple of the cocktails that Shannon's making, but I got looking at rum, and it was amazing, and I got kind of sucked into it, and I got a little carried away. So if this is too long, I apologize. If not, you find it informative, great. So, Rome, Nelson's Blood, Kill Devil, Demon Water, Pirate String, Navy Meters, Barbados Water, Screech. What am I talking about? Rum. Those are various names that rum had in the late 1600s, early 1700s. And the origin of the word rum is really unclear. There's no true known origin to it. Some people that had a hypothesis that it was called rumbullion, which is a beverage made from boiling sugarcane stalks. They also think that rum may have come from the word rumbustion, which was a slang word which meant uproar or tumult. And tumult, you know what tumultuous is, but tumult means a noisy, uncontrollable exuberance. So basically I'm thinking that it meant people just got pretty shit-faced there. So anyway, this was all around 1651 when those couple of words started appearing. There's other theories, but I know that the name rum was widely used around 1654. In Latin America, I found it interesting, and I've seen this, I've been in Latin America, that rum is not called rum, it's called ron, R-O-N. So if you've ever gone into a store in Central or Northern South America, you may see rum advertised as ron. Same thing. It's interesting, I did a little more research on it about colonial New England, because that's where we live, and rum was very popular in the 1650s, and the demand and the support for rum was pretty interesting. The first distillery in the New World was in 1664, and that was built on Staten Island in New York, and then the second distillery was in Boston in 1667, and the New England rum was a lot different than the Caribbean rum. It was actually more along the lines of a whiskey, and most of it was all exported. Europeans, however, they preferred Caribbean rum. Rhode Island The state of Rhode Island actually used it as a currency along with gold to trade with Europe. So it'd be like, yeah, I'll buy that table for 2 liters of rum versus 2 ounces of gold. So I found that a little interesting. The estimates of rum consumption in the New England area during the 13 colonies was that about 3 imperial gallons per man, woman, and child. So that's about 14 liters a year per man, woman, and child. So I don't know if the kids were really drinking that or what, but anyway, that's what it averaged out to be. And the popularity of rum continued through the American Revolution. George Washington in 1789 at his inauguration ordered a barrel of Barbados rum. And if you remember last week on our show, we talked about George Washington, okay, a little history lesson, and he liked to drink which rum? The tavern rum. So I wonder if he used that barrel of Barbados rum to concoct some tavern rum there, or tavern punch. So anyway, New England did well with their price and the consistency of the rum, but eventually there became issues with sugar and sugar taxation and exporting of sugar, and then the whiskey trade started to really take off, and that sort of drove down the demand for rum. And as whiskey became more prevalent in the Midwest and out west and places like that, rum consumption started to decline a little bit. So how is rum made? 4 steps. It's the first one is the harvesting of the sugar cane. Most sugar cane that we get comes from the Caribbean, parts of Florida, Hawaii, and we also but we also get a lot from Puerto Rico. So from that, then they take it and they press all the juice. They ferment it like all alcoholic beverages. They use various yeasts which can give or impart different flavors into that rum. And they usually use an open style when they do the fermentation. Then they take that and then they distill it. And then that is usually in either a closed potted still or an open cylinder type still. And then they age it. And aging is the final step before bottling, and aging can be in new American oak barrels, French oak barrels. It can be in charred French or American oak barrels. It can be in port wine barrels, which definitely imparts an interesting flavor. It can be in whiskey barrels. So they age that for whatever length of time based on the type of rum that it is. So I got a question. Does anybody know how many styles of rum there are? Anybody? So, I'm going to say there's 8. The first one is a light rum. You probably see it as a silver or a white rum. And that's a rum that you would use when you make a daiquiri or a pina colada. And basically that is rum that's been filtered to make it white. They filter out some of the darkness out of it. And then a gold rum is a rum that has a little more flavor. It's distilled the same as the white rum, but it hasn't been filtered, so it's a little more medium bodied. And our favorite golden rum would be this one here, which Shannon's going to use. It's Santa Teresa. It's actually bottled and distilled in Venezuela, and this is a very old distillery from 1796. So this has got amazing flavors of vanilla and cinnamon and a few other different notes like that. We love that rum. Another rum is the dark rum. Dark rum tends to be something like a Myers rum. You would use that if you were making a tiki cocktail like a Mai Tai or something of that nature. Also tends to be a little sweeter. It can be aged for a short period of time or it can be aged for a really long time. It has more of a molasses taste. If you remember last week, Shannon made the rum runner and she used the Myers dark rum. Dark rum gets confused with black rum. Black rum is not the same. And when you think of a black rum, you would think of Gosling's black rum. And that's going to be a very dark rum. We don't have any of that. That's the one rum we don't have. It's a very dark rum. It's not super molassesy tasting, but it definitely has an interesting flavor to it. So if you ever drink a dark and stormy, make sure it's with Goslin and not just dark rum. spice rum. Everybody gets what? Diet Coke and Captain Morgan. Well, Captain Morgan is just, from what I read, it's a cheap white rum that they distill or they age with cloves and pepper and anise and cardamom and things of that nature. So if you ever wake up from a hangover, you know why. And then there's a rum that I had not heard of, and it's called Rhum, R-H-U-M, Agricola, and that's a French-style rum that is brewed in the French colonies, and it's got very strict rules in terms of how it's manufactured. And then there's Kokocha. I'm not saying it exactly right, but I wrote it out so you can see. And this is what it looks like when you buy it. You probably have used or seen this advertised if you were getting a Conferencia, and that's a Brazilian style. Just throwing the tools around. That's a Brazilian style rum that is very famous. There's a lot of it is commercially manufactured, and then there's also some artisan, smaller boutique distillers, and that's what you want to look for when you buy that. And last but not least is overproof rum. What is overproof? Some people refer to it as Navy proof, 151. You know, the stuff you light on fire. A lot of times they use it as a topper on a cocktail. You make a nice cocktail, and you pour a little of that on top. And there you go. So that's sort of a brief history on rum. Shannon's making 2 cocktails. I'm just going to give a brief overview of those. One is the Oaxaca. This is one of my most favorite old-fashioned style cocktails. Quick story about it. I asked her one time when I went back to Union, Missouri to visit some friends. We were back there. I bought all the ingredients. I asked her to make up enough for 2 cocktails for 8 people. So we're thinking, you know, probably that much, right? I go to pick it up. I have a whole gallon of it. So if you run into any of the Randolph brothers back in Union, ask them about the old Hockas. Fortunately, I was a designated driver, but talk about some people getting fucked up. I mean, messed up. You guys are all over 21. I'm sure you've heard that word. And the last, and that's the old Hocka is a drink that was developed by a company, some writers called Death and Company, and that's a recipe book that we talk about a lot. And the Old Fashioned was developed by James Pepper down in Louisville, Kentucky. Really didn't become famous until he moved to New York and worked at the Waldorf Astoria, and it became one of the most popular classic cocktails in history. So, without further ado, Shannon Freezy, sorry that I took so long, but I had a lot to cover. And she's got 4 really good cocktails. Love you. Good luck.
Thank you. So, hi everyone. So I do have 4. I actually added 1 today because I had actually wanted to originally add it, but it called for a bitter we didn't have, this Bitter Truth bitter, which is, there's several bitters made in Germany, and I really wanted that bitter to make the cocktail, and it actually wasn't supposed to arrive until next week, and it arrived today, so I added it at the last minute. So we do have 4 cocktails because an old-fashioned or an old-fashioned style cocktail basically has 4 ingredients: water, sugar, an alcohol, and a bitter. And the bitters are just really these spicy liqueurs. It's kind of the spice rack of a bar. And so there are actually a lot of cocktails that are made in the old-fashioned style, but most people know an old-fashioned is a whiskey style old-fashioned. But I'm going to start by making the first old-fashioned that I'm going to make is a La Conferencia. And this one is it has the most liquors in it. And we had this, I don't know if it was, I think we had it last week, and it was absolutely delicious because it has all my favorites in it. So all of the old-fashions are what I call liquor drinks. Which means there's no fruit or juice in them, which means they are all stirred. So I'm going to start out by adding ice to my stirring glass. So I add it to, somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 full. And this one actually has 4 different liquors. Typically, an old fashioned is 2 ounces of liquor to, maybe a half an ounce of simple syrup, and then your added bitters. So we are going to put in, can you open that, honey? I didn't open it. I opened everything else but that. So I'm going to put a half an ounce in.
Do you want me to taste this to make sure it's good?
You can taste it if you want. I'm going to add a half an ounce of all of the 4 liquors. The first that I'm adding is the light rum. The second I'm going to add is the dark rum, and again, just a half ounce of this. And this rum, as Mike said, is delicious, and it's great just straight up. I drink that a lot when I'm just straight up. This has a half an ounce of mezcal. And a half an ounce of
Reposado.
Reposado. And then, sorry, I should have kept those open because I'm going to use those again. A 1/4 ounce of simple syrup. And again, simple syrup is just equal parts sugar and water. 1 dash of chocolate bitters. I use this Fee Brothers Aztec chocolate bitters. 1 dash of that. And then a dash of Angostura aromatic bitters. This is actually going to be in every single one of these cocktails. That wasn't quite a dash. There we go. And then you just stir. When you stir, you always just stir from the outside, just around. The whole concept of the stirring is you're really diluting the ice. So you want the ice to not only chill the cocktail, but also dilute the cocktail. And I actually stir for probably 30 to 40 seconds. I kind of can tell the way our ice cubes are, I can tell when they start to melt on the outer edge that they're ready. And I'm going to actually leave this here because I actually just put all my glasses in the fridge and I forgot to pull them out.
So the guy that invented the Oaxaca refers to mezcal as tequila on steroids.
So basically I have a chilled glass and I have a round ice cube in that glass. I love serving my cocktails, the old fashions on a round ice cube, which is why I actually give it a little longer stir and a little more dilution than if you're going to serve it up on the rocks. You wouldn't want to stir it as much because it's going to get naturally diluted. And then you just strain into your glass. And this one, like all other cocktails, takes an orange twist. And there is the Conferencia. So I'm going to set this one off to the side. And I'm going to move on to the next one. Just going to dump this ice. Give the glass a quick rinse. Fill it up again. Now the next cocktail is the Oaxaca Old Fashioned, which was actually the first Old Fashioned I had ever had. And I ordered it because I love tequila and mezcal, and I thought it sounded delicious. So, and that's really what started me on my Old Fashioned adventure. So this is 1.5 ounces of the Reposado. I always think there's an S before the E, and there's not. And a 1/4 ounce of the mezcal, because again, we have our 2 ounce ratio. And this one has a half a teaspoon of actually agave nectar. And my bar spoon is a half a teaspoon bar spoon. So I'm just going to fill that. And then this one takes 2 dashes of the Angostura bitters. And now this cocktail is really fun. The garnish for this cocktail is a flame orange twist. And I just want to move everything out of the way to make sure you guys can see. After I strain it. Sorry, I'm just taking a little bit to stir here. Okay, now I'm done with the tequilas. Okay, again, I'm going to pour it over my rocks in the glass. Now this cocktail takes a flamed orange twist, and so basically the easiest way to do this is to cut a completely round orange peel and try to not get the pith in there. And then I like to use kitchen matches, which I should only have one out. And then I'm gonna light the match. You basically wanna, you're not trying to get too much, you wanna get the oil into the cocktail, but you also wanna hold the match about 4 inches away. And so you squeeze it and you see the little flames that the oils in the orange catch on fire, so it gives it a nice smoky flavor. And that is the Oaxaca Old Fashioned. And this is
Deadly.
probably my favorite Old Fashioned.
Mine too.
So I'm going to move this away because now I'm moving to the bourbons. Let me just rinse this off. So those were the 2 tequila-based Old Fashions. And now I will move to the bourbon Old Fashions. The first that I'm going to make is one of my... It's actually kind of my favorite twist on just a classic Old Fashioned. And mainly the reason I love Old Fashions is because of these Luxardo maraschino cherries. If you've never had these, it's not like the maraschino cherries you get, absolutely delicious. And we used to get the cherries, make our normal Old Fashions, and then you end up with all kinds of all of the syrup in the jar, and I wanted to figure out a way to use that syrup, so I kind of made up this recipe. So this, just like a classic Old Fashioned, takes 2 ounces of whiskey. I like bourbon in my Old Fashions, but you can also use rye if you don't want them as sweet. So this is 2 ounces of bourbon. And because I use bourbon, I only use a half of, I'm going to rinse this off, sorry. I got the agave syrup on it. I only use a half a teaspoon of, I just get in there and fill up my bar spoon with this delicious maraschino cherry syrup. And then I do 1 dash of the Angostura bitter. And then who doesn't like chocolate and cherry? So I put a dash of the, actually I said that wrong. I put 1 dash of the chocolate. I need another 2 dashes of the Angostura. 1 more there. And then stir that. And now the garnish for this cocktail is these delicious cherries, as well as an orange peel. So we're gonna have fun tonight, drinking our 4 cocktails. Last weekend was quite the, Saturday was fun. After we actually, one of our neighbors came over and helped us drink all of our leftover batch cocktails. So, and I'm going to strain this into my glass over my rock. I am going to take one of the cherries, or 2, or 3. No, I'll just put one in. One of the cherries in, and again, twist your orange peel, get that juice in there, or the oil. And that is my take on a classic old fashioned cherry juice, or the cherry syrup. And then the final recipe is called a Jekyll and Hyde. So when I was researching the old-fashioned cocktails, I had found this recipe in the Death and Company book. And I thought it sounded like a delicious fall take on an old-fashioned. And as I mentioned before, I was going to make it, and then I decided not to because we didn't have the bitter. So now this, and the thing that's most interesting about this cocktail, and I'm going to start by the bourbon. This is 1.5 ounces of the bourbon. And we're using Eagle Rare, which we like Eagle Rare. I like Angel's Envy. It's not a bourbon, a good bourbon that I don't like. And then 0.5 ounce of apple brandy. This is what gives you your kind of the part of your taste of fall. And then I made cinnamon bark simple syrup. So basically what you do is you take cinnamon bark and you cook it down with sugar and water, and you actually let this sit overnight in with the cinnamon. You muddle up the cinnamon sticks, let that sit overnight, and then strain it. And this tastes almost like a Red Hot. So I'm going to use 1/2 teaspoon of this, which, as I mentioned, was my bar spoon. And then this also calls for Demura sugar, simple syrup. So Demura is a dark sugar, but it's not like brown sugar. It doesn't have a molasses taste. It's more of a toffee taste. And when you get Demura, it's more like a raw sugar. It's really coarse, like when you buy a raw sugar. So by volume, it measures out to be a 2-to-1 ratio to the water. But I actually, whenever I make all my syrups, I do a weight ratio, and the Demura actually measures out a 1-to-1. So this is the Demura simple syrup, and this is 1 teaspoon. So I'm going to measure out 2 of my bar spoons. And then I use 2 dashes of the Bitter Truth aromatic bitters. And this bitter is, when you read the description, it has hints of clove. They say it kind of, smells like gingerbread. I actually just really smell the cloves, but it smells amazing. 1, 2, and then 2 dashes of the Angostura. And so we're going to stir this one up. And I can't wait to taste this one. I'll taste this one first so you can pick which one you want. Well, this is the first time I've made it, so I haven't even tasted it. So don't rush out and buy your bitter truth bitter jet until I taste this cocktail. Okay, and this cocktail takes a lemon twist and an orange twist, and which is traditionally called a rabbit ear when you twist both together into your cocktail. So that is the Jekyll and Hyde. So you want to grab a cocktail,
Sure.
baby?
Let's grab this one.
So cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Thanks for joining us.
Happy Friday. Have
Happy
a great
Friday.
weekend.
Love you.
See you next week. Love you too.
Let me taste this. It's pretty good. I'd say it's a little sweet for me. I think I'd cut back on maybe the Demura.
Possibly, yes.
I'd cut back a little bit
Yeah,
on
I
that.
would ease up a little bit on the sugar, I think.
So, but it's pretty tasty. You can taste the cinnamon and
Yeah, I used the cinnamon bark stuff this morning when I make oatmeal every morning, and I used some of this in there. Oh my gosh, it was so good, I gotta tell you. It was just, it set it
it's a
right off.
tasty simple syrup.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Good night.